think I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to talk about our group that put this shirt together, and based on the situation that we're all too aware of that prompted the need for this to even happen. I think for over 1,000 of our kids and then some to be a part of this is simply phenomenal, because I want to make sure that we're taking care of our students here first. I think in terms of the week and a half to 2 weeks, almost 3 now, that we've done so very much in response. So I'm heartfelt to see that so many of our students are on board, as well as our staff. Dr. Anderson and I, maybe we should just talk a few minutes about what we've had an opportunity to do in working with our students. We're very fortunate, and thank the board for our VTV resource. We're probably one of the few schools in the state that have their own television program. So it allowed us to reach out to our students and actually have a question and answer session as we actually televise live. So I don't know if you want to say a word or two, Dr. Anderson.
So we had the opportunity for 8 hours through the English classes, have students be able to submit questions that they had about the school, about what occurred. Just a lot of information was able to be shared, and we were able to talk directly to students about their concerns. And so we did that through every English class all day long. So every student at our school, and English is required for all of our students, so every student at our school had the opportunity to pose questions and to have them answered by the administration and also members of our student panel.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things, Dr. Anderson and I talked to our students who initiated and actually used their First Amendment right to project their voice in terms of how they felt about this. So we did have a number of our students who wanted to actually march, and Dr. Anderson and I made an all-school announcement in terms of absolutely encouraging them to do this, and a number of our students felt to do that. And it was an extremely powerful opportunity for them to yet express themselves further relative to the situation at hand. So we were very proud of them in terms of how they comported themselves, and also receiving a number of accolades from even the authorities who were there to make sure things went well, that our students were probably as phenomenal of any students that they've seen under these kinds of circumstances. So that was, I think, another pat on the back and an opportunity for our students to see what needed to be done, and they actually did do something.
Absolutely. I mean, they were just simply asked to be safe and to be back in class for the next class period, which they did an excellent job of doing.
And we also had an opportunity through Operation Push. The Reverend Jesse L. Jackson actually came and spoke with our students as well, to a packed audience. In fact, unfortunately, we couldn't seat all of our students. So we're actually in the process of putting that footage together for those students and teachers who actually wanted to attend, but we didn't have room for them to actually participate. So he stayed here a few hours and actually processed again with our students and gave a brief history behind what blackface is about and some of the situations that plagued our students in the community, and also as a society, really, in reference to what it meant and the impact that it had for oh so many years. So I think in terms of trying to put in place those types of things, we were very fortunate. In fact, Dr. Anderson and Reverend Jackson spoke at one of our community events as well.
Yeah, so we did have an opportunity to speak to several different community events. We had our Peaceology Forum before, the early meeting, and then the day of the Peaceology event. And in addition to that, I have a parent advisory group of about 60 parents, and we had an opportunity to meet, and not just meet and talk about what happened, but really talk about what we want to do to move forward. And they gave recommendations and talked about what they needed and what their students needed from the school and from the community to be able to move forward in a positive manner.
And over the last 2 weeks, we've also put out a community forum for our parents. We had nearly 300 parents reserve to actually come to the meeting to talk about how they felt about it, how it impacted their students, what they're prepared to do moving forward, and the types of things that were most important to them as a community that celebrates diversity. I think that's one of the challenges that we spoke about. When you're in a homogeneous setting and there's only one of something, there tends to be not a lot of issues. I think the fact that we, and I say we, probably the majority of everyone in this room, choose to live in a diverse community, be that race, religion, creed, socioeconomic status, religion, LGBTQ, the whole gamut. We make a concerted effort to live in this setting because I think it's so much more valuable in the real world setting. So in terms of some of the things that come up as issues, you're bound to have those clashes. I think in terms of how we choose to handle it, there are neighboring communities that choose not to handle it, and I'm not making any disparaging remarks. I'm stating that's the way they chose to respond in terms of it not being a school issue. I think we've tried to do as much as we can in terms of making sure our kids, and I say our kids, are situated. And I think for the mere fact that we have more than 1,000+ students now that understand, have the history behind the event, and are willing to and ready to move forward, that is most important to us.
Probably one of the most impactful and powerful things about having all the conversations is we've really had an opportunity to get some truths out there. There's been a lot of misinformation spread. I'm just assuming that it's about telephone and information getting out there, but we've had a lot of misinformation spread, and it was a great opportunity to be able to tell our truths about what really did happen and what we really did do in this circumstance and other circumstances. And I think I would also add to that, Dr. Mansfield alluded to the fact that we had another school community have the same incident happen, but instead of at McDonald's, theirs happened at a gas station. And how they chose to handle it was different. And I guess we should be happy in a way that our community trusts us to handle things that happen with students and turn to us to do that educational piece. And even though it was outside of our scope of authority as far as it being on a non-school day at a non-school event and nothing related to the school at all, we still took on the responsibility to make sure that our students understood the gravity of the incident and also could learn from it so we could move forward.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the biggest challenges in terms of what was presented to us at face value and also the legal ramifications in terms of what we can and cannot do. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge for our students, for a number of parents and also the community to try to understand what that meant from the school's perspective. And the school only has a limited scope, and we talk about portal to portal, and I don't know if you want to make mention of that, but don't things happen on the weekend? There are things that we can't reach quite as far as we would like to relative to student discipline or student behaviors as they make their way back into what looks like a school setting, but actually was not.
So there's a lot of a misunderstanding about the scope of authority of the school, because some people will say things like, well, you know, when I was at school, I got in a fight on the way home from school, or I got in a fight on the way to school and the school disciplined me. Or I was at an event and I came back to school and, you know, we had this conversation, we got this verbal confrontation about it and the school disciplined me. So two things. One is the portal to portal. That's from the time you leave your house in the morning until you get back to your home at night, that you're under the umbrella of the school. And also when things happen outside in the community and students bring that conflict back into the school, like they fight, have verbal confrontations and that type of thing, then we have to deal with that as a school issue. I think the exact language really talks about that we have a statutory duty to maintain discipline in school, on school grounds, at extracurricular events, and with respect to all school programs, and which doesn't include what students do on their own time.
So I think the aspect that, you know, it was connected also and not fairly adjudicated relative to some things that had happened in the fall. One of the things that we started the school with, and maybe you can talk about that in terms of what had actually happened to one of our students.
So for the second year, I started my school year with losing a student to gun violence. And that's a really hard thing to do. And we had issues here in our school with students doing things, fighting, having arguments, claiming this, claiming that. And we needed to have a conversation with those families about those students on behalf of student safety. And as I think about that day and that particular program that we put together, as we opened up that program that day, that we said that we wanted to create a safer environment for all students, bring parents' attention to things they might not be aware of, and empower them to have conversations with their children, and to proactively engage them to be a part of this situation and be a part of the solution. We actually told parents about the fights we'd had, the threats we'd had to students, just about some of the behavior that was happening here in school that was impacting our school environment. And we wanted them, and the last question we asked parents was, how do we work together to be sure our students and our school is safe? So this was definitely a situation where there was a direct nexus to school because of what was happening in school.
And even some of the things that happen outside of school, social media has been a game changer. It has been an absolute game changer. And I think very much like the situation in the fall, we had a number of students posting things on social media that then influenced kids to either question what was posted and to react to what was posted here in the school setting. So I think as this setting occurred again outside of school, it certainly had a social media catalyst that really catapulted this into another realm in terms of what we had to contend with.
And something that really needs to be clarified, and I'm not really sure where this misconception came, but there were these rumors out there that students in the fall had suspensions and expulsions and things were noted on their discipline records, and none of that is true. It was actually a situation where we needed to have a conversation with parents. And as I've stated, with the students who were involved in the blackface incident at McDonald's, I also met with their parents, not over a long period of span of time. I found out at 7:30 in the morning, what had occurred. By 12 o'clock, all of those families were in my office in a meeting. And if those families had said, no, we're not coming to school, I would have said, well, you know, you and your child's gonna have to stay home until you come and have a meeting with us. Your child, in other words, will be excluded from school until we meet, because it was a situation that I needed to investigate and find out about. So I'm just really glad that we had the opportunity to clear up a lot of those misconceptions, because I'm not really sure what the source of the misinformation was, but I want to be sure that we communicate that all of our students are important to us, and I feel like it's essential that we partner with parents in order to affect a change with students.
Yeah.
Before we just resort to disciplinary action, I want to be sure that we bring parents in and have those conversations with them.
And I think one of the other misconceptions in terms of what we can and cannot share, we cannot share student discipline information by law, or any of the other consequential issues that occur by law, or even if they did not occur by law. And those parents who chose to contact the media, they chose to contact the media. Someone this evening chose to contact WGN. They're here. We don't have control over that. If they come, we just have to provide the information that we have for them, and at that point in time, they make decisions. And as Dr. Anderson said, I'm not sure how the rumor got out that kids got expelled, and because I'm old school, make them show you their suspension letter. Make them show you their expulsion letter if they indeed got suspended or expelled. So that reality, from that perspective, I can only clear that and don't know quite what else to do. But like I said, my thrust in this whole issue, as well as Dr. Anderson, and I believe I can speak for the board, has been, number one, make sure we take care of our students. That's our primary and most important thing to do. And then to make sure we take care of our parents, and then make sure we take care of our staff. And our staff's been absolutely phenomenal in this. There are conversations that they're having that may be difficult conversations to have, but they're important conversations to have. And they've stepped up to help with those conversations. And in addition, our community has some work to do. Dr. Anderson and I were in a meeting with our village and a number of the other school districts, and both villages, actually, Homewood and Flossmoor. And I don't know if you want to share some of the background for that and some of the initiatives moving forward.
Well, we're really just talking about what are the things we need to do. You know, a lot of people like to mention what happened as like this one isolated event that happened here in our community, and that's it. But we know, those of us who are watching the news or staying abreast of things, that things are happening all over our country, that are unacceptable when it comes to bringing people together. You know, when we talk about living united, United States and living united, there are a lot of things happening during this time period. And we talked about at the village meeting, what do we need to do, and not only what do we need to do, but what do we want to do? And are there ways that we can bring together people for training, for information, outside of the school? It's not just about the education in the school, but outside of the school community. How do we bring people together? Are we going to be working with the ADL and other organizations? We even had organizations who offer to fund different forums for us, so that we can actually do training and bring in trainers to do work as a school community. And I guess I want to say, out of all of this, what I appreciate the most, Dr. Mansfield, is that we are in a community that has chosen to be a diverse community. And I'm really glad to see all the people that have come out to make sure that we do exactly that we find a way to work together, that we find a way to live together, and that we find a way to move forward together. Even in this environment that we have on our national scene, it doesn't mean that we have to be like that here in our school and in our community.
Yeah, and I think the national scene, and one of the students brought this up, you got to play fair. As much as blackface and as offensive as it is, we've talked through it historically. Some kids didn't know what it was, and they needed to be educated because they're in a different generation now where they don't clearly understand the implications. And one of the students also talked about the movie White Chicks. You have black men in white face. So talk to me about playing fair in terms of what the implications are. And I think it's a larger conversation to have relative to what it actually means and the kinds of things that you're trying to get to as far as the root of those issues. So from society's issues, we're not any different. We're a school. Our kids are growing up into young adults. They're choosing what to react to, what not to react to from a intellectual standpoint and as well as an emotional standpoint. So we're trying to meet them at all those levels. And for the last 3.5 weeks, that's pretty much been our work. So again, just to get you up to date in terms of where that ended up. And thank you to the board members that were involved to the degrees that you were over the course of the whole year, from the fall situations to now. And also Dr. Anderson, the rest of the administrative staff, and our teaching staff who've been up multiple hours trying to make sure that we're taking care of everyone. And I think we've done that the best we can given the conditions that we were dealt.
Yeah, thank you, Vaughn. I really appreciate that. And before we jump into individual comments, I will take a moment to say a thank you from the board for not only the administrative team, the staff, and our students for the reaction to the situation that happened 2.5 weeks ago. Couldn't be prouder, having 2 boys in the school, couldn't be prouder of the way I have heard the students have reacted over the last 2.5 weeks. It has been a follow the child moment for some of the adults in the room, and I couldn't be prouder for how our kids have reacted and taken a step back and listening and learning and understanding. And the one thing that I'll close with here real quickly is the message that I got from Reverend Jackson when he came. And he said a lot of stuff, and he said it eloquently, and he was fantastic, and I think it was the right message for our kids at the right time. But he reminded them, every one of them, that this isn't the last time in your life that you're going to have to deal with racism. White kids, black kids, brown kids, yellow kids, doesn't matter. What determines, the person that you become is how you react to it. And he had some fantastic advice for our kids on what to do and the choices that they could make from this point forward. And I was taken aback by that. I expected him to say stuff like that, and a lot of stuff impacted me. But the one thing that I took away was, how do our kids react from this moment forward? And I've been incredibly proud of how they listened to each other, how they listened to people like Dr. Anderson and Dr. Mansfield and Reverend Jackson, who came in with the right intentions and was the right guy to give the right message at the right time. On that note, I would like to move on to item 4B, individual comments. And as I do every meeting, as a reminder, per board policy, individual comments tonight are limited to 5 minutes. And Ms. Ganaster is our clock over there, and presentations of 1 or more groups. Thank you, Nate. Presentations of one or more groups will be made by a representative of each group respectively, and questions will be answered on a follow-up basis as per our usual process. So if there's anybody in the audience this evening that would like to address the board, please ask you to come to the microphone and state your name. And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How y'all doing? I'm Stringer Harris. I've been out here in this community since 1978, and I was out there on that day when the kids stepped out, and I've been a part of a lot of demonstrations, and on this particular morning, the hairs on my back stood up because it was such a historic event. And while we were out there, the kids said, hey, we have to go back inside. And we adults wanted to know, well, why do you have to go back inside? I said, well, they said if we don't go back inside, we're gonna get in trouble. I said, well, that's crazy. How can they put a cap on the kids demonstrating outside? They said, yeah. And then when I hear somebody up here say, well, y'all gave an announcement to say, hey, the kids can go out, but, quote, they have to be back for the next period. Well, you did put a cap on the kids. Unacceptable. You can't put a cap on the kids demonstrating for something they believe in, because now you're still holding them in that bottle. That doesn't make any sense. On a couple of Sundays ago, yes, Jesse Jackson came and he spoke very elegant, very nice, but he don't speak for me. I'm sorry. He don't speak for me. He speak for Jesse Jackson. That was cute, though, that he was here. But after that was over with, after the cameras left, after the news people left, so did the superintendent and principal. And as I looked around, I said, wow, where did they go? Because everybody else was still there, and they broke up into groups. And if we were always trying to be united, like the shirts that you have there, like the kids were trying to portray to you guys, what was so important that after the principal spoke, after whoever spoke, you guys left? I looked for you. They looked for you. You were gone. But this is supposed to be something where we all come together and we talk about something. But you can't sit here and say what you want and then walk away from me. That's what happened that day. I felt like, again, this is just my opinion and how I felt. I don't know how anybody else felt. But that didn't do anything for us. That was just a show, and it was a good show. It was a nice show for the community or whatever else was trying to go on. It wasn't accepted. I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. When you say you can't do anything because the kids were off school property and it happened on the weekend, correct? I wouldn't have known who these kids was if they didn't represent HF High School on their shirt. They had a clear as day, Homewood Flossmoor. If that doesn't make you guys somewhat accountable for these kids, especially representing you guys, they're representing the school. Okay, if they had just a plain white t-shirt on, which they didn't, all I've been hearing is excuses. They was off school property. It was on the weekend. We're limited by so much we can do. What can we do? What's the next step? What's the solution? Because we heard everything else, and we those shirts are beautiful. How you bring the kids together, that's what we want to see here. That's wonderful. But what else is the solution? I promise you, if you talk to these kids individually, the problem is still there. We're getting the information from the kids, not just one kid, not just two kids. If all these kids are lying, then it's a problem. We're not in the school with them. We don't know what's going on. Then they come back into the school that day after demonstrating. Some of the kids' IDs was taken. Maybe you don't know about it. Maybe you should. But again, these kids not lying. They're not lying. You can shake your head. You can look in disbelief. All these kids can't be lying. You're not standing everywhere. You don't know what's going on. That's just like, hey, your kid acted up at school. No, not my kid. Well, was you with your kid? You don't know what your kid is doing. The fact that more than 3 or 4 kids, actually 10, maybe 12, said, look, our IDs were taken because we came back into school and we was after the bell had rung. You put a cap on these kids. Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Well, I'll respond to a few things just to put it in order. A number of kids stayed out there for an extra hour. So when you say the kids came in, they came in because they wanted to come in. We didn't tell them to come in. Over 50 kids continued to stay out there for about 45 minutes. We let them back into school. The other piece, well, let me finish. The other piece, Dr. Anderson and I have been doing multiple community programs. The fact that we had to leave and go to another one is logistically what we have to do. So that was no slight against that particular program because, as I said, we've been to probably 15 additional, programs. So for the students, and these people actually came and met with me already. So I'd offer you the same thing. If you want to come and talk to me because I left, do what they did. Make an appointment, come in and see me. I spoke with them for almost an hour. So when you talk about a need for the four of you, unless there's other people in your group, you've got access to Dr. Anderson or myself at any point in time that you would like to continue the conversation, and I'd offer that to you. Do you have any other? That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mansfield. Yes, please come on up.
Good evening, board and administration. I appreciate hearing your comments this evening, but there was some contradiction going on. And not a lot, but the initiation, and in regards to this blackface incident, the initiation of healing, unity, and peace should have started right here in this school. It should not have been started, and I'm not slighting parents, because I think parents and the students did what they were supposed to do. It's a fabric. I mean, there's a lot of communities beyond Homewood and Flossmoor that helped to make this school up. I mean, that was part of what I heard in your piece and when you were speaking, that you all met with villages in Homewood and Flossmoor. What about Chicago Heights? What about Hazel Crest? What about the pockets of Olympia Fields? What about Glenwood? And I think you kind of leave that piece out. But back to this incident. The initiation of the healing and the peace and the unity should have started here with the administration. You knew about it by what you just said at 7:30 on Sunday morning. Why didn't you get in front of it? Why didn't you take the steps to bring the unity here? Because it was going to affect the students here coming back to the student body. So with that said, then I look at how you decided to communicate with the kids. See, there was a lack of communication to begin with. And there's a lack of accountability. Being a former board member, I understand about the privacy issue of students. I understand about the expulsion. I get that piece. But what I do not get is, why would you come over cameras like you're President Trump or somebody, and you're trying to reach 50 states? What was wrong with opening up the auditorium or the gym, whichever held the most, and sitting among the students of this school, and you had to run 3 and 4 sessions, and hearing them, engaging with them, being right there in the moment? You said in the newspaper, and I quote the HF Chronicle, you said something about you never found yourself here in this place. I get it. It was wilderness. It was training wheel moments, like one of your board members went through her election saying. However, what was wrong with sitting and sharing some of the stories you all had? Because you, Dr. Mansfield, came into this school and you were a principal during a time where white people didn't want you to be here. So I'm a little bit taken back about the attitude. And it's not a reaction, it's the response. That's what defines us. It's the response and the lack thereof from the board and from the administration. You did not sit among these kids like they belonged here, like you were an administrator. You failed. You failed our children in your response. It took you 4 days. You act like you were a part of them walking out and protesting. You may have supported it, but they was protesting against you and your lack of response.
Hang on. Hang on. No. Miss, I will not allow you to stand up there and attack.
Well, you too, Steve. You did nothing. nothing. You did nothing. You all failed these students. Well, is he tired? Does he need to retire? Because you know what? The fact and the lack of not having the ideas and the creativity to come to the table for leadership, maybe we need some new leadership. Maybe we need some new leadership.
Thank you.
Maybe if you take that initiation and do what you need to do and let the board run the school instead of the superintendent. This is why good cronies don't make good board members.
You can take it out on me.
You know, it ain't out on
I'm
you.
here.
As a
I'm
whole,
here.
as a school. And
your
this
time-
was part of the problem.
Thank you so much.
You did not hold a town hall meeting. You wanted to hold a control setting where students and parents can go in and they be told
Okay.
how to.
Okay, your time is up. Ma'am, your time is up. I've given you more time.
You failed our
I've heard you. I wrote it down.
And
I've
as
failed
an
our schools.
administration, you failed.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Go home if you're tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you state your name, please?
Dr. LaShawn Latrice.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, board. Hi, everyone. I came, my first issue with the board, thank you, Ms. Bryant, because she's been very helpful. My issue with the board is that it took this long for you all to convene after something like that happened 3 weeks ago. That, to me, is unacceptable and unexplainable. I don't understand how we had to show up. She got the video at 7:30 on Sunday. I was one of the people who sent that video, and I knew it was going to get to them. My point is that there were a series of meetings to try to stop something from unfolding when really it should have been something immediate that had taken place. And as a parent, I have a current student here and 5 other graduates that have come before them. So I'm a longtime resident of this community, but I'm also a person that stands up for things that I believe are unjust. This situation was not handled. I agree with the prior 2 people that spoke. I just felt like I shouldn't have had to go and request a meeting the first thing Monday morning from Dr. Mansfield, and he'll tell you we waited patiently, right? We waited, he took his time and he did talk to us, but it was more of an urgency to gather the staff together and deal with the issue that way instead of dealing with the parents that were waiting in that office. And there were some irate parents, and they had good reason. You know, they had their own reasons. I had my reason why I was there. While I was in the school, I did witness a message over the PA system that I was very offended by that the principal spoke. It was almost telling the children that they should look past this because there's too much negative publicity that has been taking place against HF. That message said to my son, you don't have a right to feel the way you want to feel. I was offended. Just so happened I was in the school and I heard the message. It came across completely the wrong way. And the other parents thought the same thing, and I'm sure other people sitting here did as well. What I'm saying is we understand that there are legal ramifications. You can't say A, B, and C. But when the climate of the school is affected and these students are affected by 4 students, you all have a duty to deal with it. And it shouldn't be dealt with 3 weeks later. I know you had 2 parent forums. I registered for one. When I found out that we were going to be asked to put into groups, that was not my setting, because let me tell you something. As a researcher, as a person that studies the community, there is no way you can gauge how everyone feels if you dissect them into small groups. That's a way to shush them up. And so what I did not want to do is to be shushed up. I applaud Rainbow Push, but guess what? If they wanted to work with us, they should have come to us. They came to you all. We were linked in with the students. Their voices was what mattered to us. Rainbow Push did what worked for them, and we know all of them, and we respect them, but guess what? They got this one wrong. They dropped the ball. Because what they did, they tried to come in front and show face in front of you all. But what that did, that negated how those children felt. And so now you all may see the few that stand here and say that it's okay, but talk to the students individually, the ones who are part of our group chats, and the ones who are letting us know that they are not happy with how this was handled. And so as a parent, we just can't let it rest. And that's why for me, it's not about just having Reverend Jackson stop by and encourage the students, because they did need a history on blackface, but also we needed a history on whose fault it is that that is not being taught so that people know that it's offensive. Because our students are saying, we know it's offensive because we're black. But those of us who are not are saying, oh, we didn't know. We participated in the Peaceology Forum. We didn't go into the individual groups. We stood and talked to the students who were crying because they watched their principal and their superintendent walk out. Check the videos, they're on Facebook. We did not make this up. And so what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, that Peaceology forum was done prematurely. And I know Dr. St. John, and I talked to him about it. That forum should have been done after some steps had been taken. Where's the cultural sensitivity training now? What's happening now? Who's dealing with the trauma that the children are facing as of right now? They got to leave and check out of school on May 31st. And they're going to be angry because they saw some kids do blackface and they felt like nothing happened. Nobody represented their voices. So I'm standing here as a parent, and I did ask for the expulsion of the children. I'm not drawing back on that just because Rainbow Push said kumbaya. Guess what? I love everybody. But consequences are consequences. And what we've said is that throughout the history of us being in this district, there has been a disparity between how black students are disciplined and how white students are disciplined. We get very technical when it comes to a certain way that people look. So I'm standing here to say I need you all to really dig deep. When you say that you're going to address this moving forward, we got to talk to the community, you all. Talk to the community as a whole. Certain things it's hard to participate in when you feel like it's controlled. I want to only hear what this group has to say or this group has to say. Let's get us together collectively. Let's stop putting us to the side and saying, because what happens, you all, and what happened at that Peaceology forum, those groups separated based on where they lived and what color they were. When those people got up and represented those groups, when they got up and they talked, if anybody was paying attention, the people who spoke, who didn't look like me, had a different perception of what that Peaceology forum was, and the people who looked like me were hurt. And I spoke to Dr. St. John, and he's having another event to deal with it. So I'm just saying, you all, these are things that we are saying that have to be addressed so that we don't forget that our students are still here, and they're going to continue. I have another student that's coming here. So that's why I'm not going to let up on this until I see some real change. Thank you, guys.
I'm Margaret Epperson, and I have two students here. One came through, and my friend, Dr. Peter St. John, he ran that program. Around 300 people came that day. Of all races. There was a high proportion of African Americans there. It was broken up in different groups by age and by gender, not where you live. That's false information put out. Also, no, I'm talking to everyone here. You don't have to tell me. I was there also. Also, your group came in and was asked to be a part of those groups. You did not. You refused to. You stayed in the middle, and you did not want to participate. So by you saying you came there and you wanted to be a part of it, that is also false, because they did not become a part of the groups. They came in with their own agenda. This young gentleman came in, wanted to speak his mind. He spoke a little bit and then got a little anxious, and then you guys came up and spoke for him. I don't want to hear the voice of you. I want to hear the voice of the students. They are the ones here that are going through this, and I want to hear what they have to say. You have your own agenda, and when you show up, the media shows up. So I would just like to let people know that on June 9th, there is another Peaceology forum for anyone in this community that wants to come together and join a group. And if you show up and you don't want to be part of a group, then you're going to be asked to leave, because that is not the agenda of the program. So June 9th, from 2 to 5 at Flossmoor Community Church. I invite you to come. We're going to come together, make a game plan, and get some things in action as a community for the people who actually live in our community. Because some people who are speaking have not even gone to the school and don't even live in the community. Thank you.
We got one coming to the left here. She was already. I got you.
Good evening. My name is Sheena Patton. First, I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Anderson. From my understanding is that the issue was addressed on Monday morning when the students came in, and I do appreciate receiving the truths and the information with the parent forum. And I do feel like having small groups, everybody's voice was heard in those small groups. I did attend one of the parent sessions, and I do feel like what was said that you guys will be able to digest it and decide on what's next steps. So I do say thank you very much. Obviously, you guys have done the best that you can, and we should all give you an opportunity to continue to improve and work for improvement on the next school year. So thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Amina Matthews, community activist, humanitarian. That peaceology that the sister's talking about, I'm not knocking it. That really was not the business at hand, board members, people. That wasn't the business at hand. If it wanted to be a peaceology, then that's what it could have been, but it should not have been used for the purpose of not dealing with racism, not dealing with our young black men and women in 2019, still dealing with issues that people are put in positions that will keep us as African Americans quiet. You miss this teachable moment. You all miss this teachable moment. You all failed these children miserably, as his parents said. I have no gripes about the church. I have no gripes about what that was about. But my gripes was about Dr. Mansfield as a brother, highly documented. There's some things that you know, if that was the other way around, what a consequence would be, because I watched the president pet you up, shut the lady down about how she's talking and feeling about how her child felt about being black in your school and how that made her feel. You missed that teachable moment of listening to your student council, strong black women, our future, speaking about how they will not, how they cannot, and how they should not allow who was a white boy to make fun of their race that just so happened to be a boyfriend. You all missed that teachable moment. You all brought Reverend Jackson in. God bless him. He's done a lot of great work, but we cannot forget the work that he's really done, that your family marched with him for, with Martin Luther King. We're not going back there. And without you all taking care of this situation, handling this situation evenly on a teachable moment, as we hold Flossmoor, Homewood High School at high standards. I saw the students get acclimates. Black girl magic acclimates. But then we're being teased, man, for being black. You missed that teachable moment, sir. As a humanitarian, I refuse to each day, that's trauma. We've already dealing with, do you know what could have happened if we didn't intervene? Do you know what could have happened on what you're saying, claiming? No, we're talking about no claiming. I don't claim to be black. I am black and I am proud to be black. Of the students claiming to be, and therefore conflict that you all had mediated, but it hadn't been. I speak with the youth on a regular basis to calm them down from the anxiety that's in this school, from the dictatorship of what they should as an African American and should not say and do, and how they should and should not act as an African American. But to be teased is acceptable. To be African American, that's unacceptable. Shame on you. Soch, I hope you rest well with that. As you used in the meeting, that you don't face racism because you've documented yourself up. I just witnessed it there as a good old boy. A good boy sitting there with him, right? Come on, man. Our young people need you. No,
Thank you.
our people need
Ma'am, your time
you.
is up. I really
Our
do
people
appreciate
need
that.
you.
Doctor, please, please. Your time is up.
Mansfield, you hear me, sir?
Ma'am? Does anybody else like to come up and address the crowd? You got something next? Come on up. Thank you.